Mary, Mary, quite contrary. How does your garden grow? Most of us only keep the first two lines now. We can still hear them in the back of our skulls, like a tune from a room we lived in once and then left behind. But as kids, we knew the whole thing, every word, every beat, like it belonged to the same world as hopscotch chalk and scraped knees. So, let's say it the way the modern world remembers it. Clean and complete. Because these words are the only reliable crime scene we've got. Mary, Mary, quite contrary. How does your garden grow? With silver bells and cockle shells, and pretty maids all in a row. On the surface, it's a picture book garden, something ornamental, controlled, almost sweet. But that phrase, quite contrary, doesn't sound sweet. It sounds like a verdict, a scolding. It gives Mary a personality before we're ever told who she is. And if you've ever noticed how nursery rhymes hang on to certain words, like teeth, you feel it here. This one isn't praising a woman. It's warning you about her. The oldest version we can point to with certainty doesn't come from Tudor England or a Scottish court. It comes from a tiny London book printed in 1744, Tommy Thumb's Pretty Song Book, one of the earliest nursery rhyme collections ever published. And in that first printing, Mary isn't Mary Mary, she's Mistress Mary. Mistress Mary, quite contrary. How does your garden grow? With silver bells and cockle shells, and so my garden grows. No pretty maids, no neat final image, just that clipped, almost smug ending. And so my garden grows. A garden that grows because she says it does. The date matters because the Mary's people connect this to most often lived almost 2 centuries earlier. So, either this rhyme traveled by mouth and memory for generations before someone trapped it on paper, or the meaning people swear by was planted later, like a grave disguised as a flower bed. Even after 1744, the rhyme doesn't sit still. Different versions bloom in different places. Some swap the ending, some change the flowers. Some add a single word that turns the whole tone sideways. Later printings give us lines like, sing cuckolds all in a row, or replace pretty maids with flowers like marigolds or cowslips. That's what folk rhymes do, they mutate in the wild. So, when people insist there is only one true meaning, the rhyme itself quietly disagrees. It's been rewritten by so many mouths that by now it's less like a fossil and more like a riverbed, shaped by whatever flowed through it. And that's why the question, who is Mary, won't die, because the rhyme has always left the door open. Over time, 3 identities have clung to this rhyme like ivy on a church wall. First, Mary I of England, Catholic queen remembered by Protestants as Bloody Mary. Second, Mary, Queen of Scots, Catholic rival to Elizabeth, imprisoned, executed, turned into legend. Third, Mary, the mother of Jesus, or the Catholic Church itself, an allegory hiding in a playground tune. None of these are proven, but each suspect fits something in the rhyme so well that people have been trying to lock her in place for centuries. It's like holding a candle under 3 portraits and watching the shadow line up a little too neatly. Mary Tudor takes England's throne in 1553 and tries to pull the country back into Catholic orbit. Her father Henry VIII broke with Rome. Her brother Edward VI drove Protestant reforms deeper into law. Mary wants the old faith restored. But England is no longer one garden. It's a country split down the root. In some towns, Catholic altars still stand. In others, reformers have torn out statues and stained glass. Mary inherits a realm already raw with religious violence, and she rules like someone who thinks the soul of the nation is slipping away through her fingers. Her reign becomes defined by punishment. Protestants are tried for heresy. Many refuse to recant. Mary's government burns them in public squares. Executions meant to terrify the wavering back into obedience. The fires are real. The nickname comes later. Bloody Mary is the memory Protestants build when she's gone, a warning name passed down the way you pass down a family ghost story. If the rhyme is about her, quite contrary becomes a child-sized accusation. This is the queen who tried to reverse England's religious direction. And the garden. In this reading, it isn't flowers at all. It's England. A realm she forced to grow her way, even if the soil had to be scorched first. There's a reason this rhyme keeps getting pulled toward politics. A garden is not wild nature. A garden is control. It grows the way the owner commands. Rows mean planning, pruning, discipline. A garden is beauty created through force. So when the rhyme asks, "How does your garden grow?" it doesn't feel like a casual question. It feels like a challenge. How does your world survive under your hand? What are you using to make it grow in neat lines? Even if you'd never heard the Bloody Mary theory, the metaphor hits. Because gardens and kingdoms are the same kind of thing. Both look peaceful in paintings. Both hide the violence it takes to keep them orderly. Then we reach the objects, the little shining clues in the rhyme's palm. Silver bells and cockle shells. Some interpretations keep them sacred. Silver bells as the small Sanctus bells rung at Catholic Mass. Cockle shells as pilgrim badges. Symbols worn by those who traveled to holy shrines, especially Santiago de Compostela. In that version, the rhyme is soaked in Catholic imagery. It could be a quiet celebration of the old faith, or a Protestant sneer at ritual and relics. Same objects. Opposite intention. Because folk songs live long enough to be sung by enemies. A lullaby can become satire without changing a single word. Other interpretations go darker. They claim the bells and shells weren't holy at all, but slang for torture devices, turning the garden into a killing ground. It's a theory repeated endlessly online, but historians don't find solid evidence for those specific meanings in the 16th century. It likely grew later, after the rhyme was already famous, when people began searching for a more brutal secret inside the lines. Still, the rumor matters, because it tells us how the rhyme feels. Even as a child, you can sense that something is off. It's a nursery rhyme that sounds like it's smiling through clenched teeth. A garden with a shadow hidden behind the hedge. Sometimes the meaning isn't in what's true. It's in what people keep needing to believe. If Mary I is the Queen of Fire, Mary, Queen of Scots, is the Queen of Tragedy. She rules Scotland in the same century, Catholic in a country tumbling toward Protestantism, then becomes a prisoner in England, then an execution that seals her into legend. Her life is a slow tightening of a net. Political enemies paint her as dangerous. Allies desert. The years in captivity pile up like stones. When she dies, she doesn't just die as a woman, she dies as a symbol. And symbols attract rhymes the way graves attract flowers. In her case, "How does your garden grow?" reads as a question about rule. How do you make a realm survive when everyone wants it pruned to their shape? And pretty maids all in a row suddenly takes a familiar form. Mary Stuart famously traveled with 4 ladies-in-waiting, all named Mary, the 4 Marys. A court detail so tidy it feels like folklore even when it's true. So the rhyme becomes a miniature court portrait. Queen in the center. Attendants lined like shadows behind her. It's elegant, it's cinematic, and just as impossible to prove as the Bloody Mary reading. The third suspect isn't royal at all. Some read the rhyme as Catholic allegory. Mary is the Virgin Mary. The garden is the church. The silver bells are liturgical bells that mark the sacred moment of Mass. The cockle shells are pilgrim tokens. The pretty maids are nuns, ordered in rows. In 18th century England, where the rhyme first appears in print, Catholicism still sits in the national imagination like a buried ember. It's been outlawed, feared, romanticized, mocked, and remembered within the span of a few generations. A children's rhyme becomes the perfect hiding place for that tension, small enough to pass undetected, old enough to sound inevitable. And that's why this reading matters even if no one can prove it, because it explains why the rhyme survived at all. It carried something that still stung. Here's the part that won't sit still. We have no evidence the rhyme was known before the 1700s. No Tudor version on paper, no Scottish broadsheet, nothing that anchors it to either queen's lifetime. So why do people keep dragging it backward into the 1500s? Because the rhyme sounds like judgment. Because quite contrary feels political. Because once a culture wants a secret, it will graft a face onto it. History doesn't always write the rhyme. Sometimes the rhyme chooses the history. A short, catchy verse becomes a container for whatever a nation can't stop arguing about. Faith, power, women who ruled when men didn't want them to. The rhyme doesn't need to be born in the Tudor age to become about the Tudor age. Folklore is the afterlife of history. Nursery rhymes are history collapsed into melody. They teach feelings about rulers long after the rulers are dust. A toddler doesn't need to know the theology of heresy or the politics of a split kingdom. But they can learn, by rhythm alone, that Mary was contrary, that her garden was strange, that order belonged to someone else. A crown shrinks into a skipping song. Violence dissolves into flowers. A nation's grudges become something you can clap to. And that is how cultural memory survives. Not always as truth, but as a tune that refuses to die. So, what is Mary, quite contrary really? A Tudor insult that wandered forward into print? A Scottish echo dressed in borrowed words? A sacred Catholic relic hiding in a playground tune? Or a simple garden rhyme that gathered darker meanings the way old stones gather moss? We don't get a clean answer. What we get is a glimpse of how people plant history into children's mouths and let it grow there for centuries. Next time on Lore&Ruin, we step into another nursery circle. Another song that seems to carry plague and death on its breath. Ring around the rosy, the nursery rhyme that wasn't the plague, until we needed it to be. Because sometimes the darkest history isn't written in chronicles. It's hidden in the songs we teach our children before they know what they're singing.